And Lord, we pray that you implode the International Space Station, because man was never meant to leave your heaven.
Forever and ever. Amen.
Sorry. This is Unfuck the Poor. I'm Joe Love. God wants you to give us 5 stars wherever you're listening to this. Smash your little fingers on your screens. Give us 5 stars.
Good things will happen to you. And you must send this chain email to 5 of your friends.
Corey.
It's in Delaware.
Welcome back. All good businesses are based in Delaware.
Many fine quality establishments.
Fun fact: if people don't know the inside joke that we're making here, if you want to set up a shell company, the best place to do that is Delaware. And if at any point you go to the Security and Exchange Commission's website to look at upcoming IPOs, and you look at their sheets that all the companies are required to submit as part of their SEC paperwork, the majority of them, like 90-something%, I'm making this number up, I just know that I've looked through a lot of them, the majority of them are founded or based in Delaware.
And there's a single address, like a single building in Delaware that sort of infamously has a ridiculous number of corporations that list it as their headquarters. So many that, of course, every person would have like a square foot to stand in or something.
And one lady named Kathy is the signatory for all of the major international corporations.
Kathy's making bank.
Well, listen, if UBS goes down, Kathy is fucked.
She has the V6 Mustang, automatic, camel leather.
It is, however, a hardtop, so she's not making out great. All right, so Corey's back. We're talking about religion. Send your money to us. Send 5 stars. Okay, we're done with that. We were talking about what was that lady's name? Kathy Morris Rogers. She's a Christian naturalist. She introduced Bill 874, the National Day of Fasting or Humiliation, Fasting, and Prayer. Not the day, the year of fasting, humiliation, and prayer. So that was crazy. We've discovered that she is a pietist. We've talked all about our faiths and everything. And where we left off, we were talking about basically the First Amendment. We went off on a tangent. So the First Amendment, we were saying the First Amendment is supposed to protect us from people like Rogers. It's supposed to, but Christian nationalists don't believe in the separation of church and state, freedom of religion and freedom from religion. Resolution 874 is a testament to how emboldened Christian nationalists have become in the 21st century. And it can be nearly impossible to differentiate between Christian nationalist ideas and the general beliefs of the modern Republican Party, and this is not a mistake. American journalists Chris Hedges and David Neiwert assert Christian fascism emerged in the Great Depression and gained traction into and after World War II. From Neiwert's 2009 book, The Eliminationists, quote, earlier forms of fascism were explicitly Christian in nature. This is particularly true of the extremists who formed small but widespread societies around neo-Nazi philosophies and admiration for Hitler, most notably those led by the crypto-fascist mystical philosopher William Dudley Pelley. From Hedges' 2008 American Fascists, quote, during the Depression, when many on the right and in corporate America were openly flirting with fascism, fundamentalist preachers such as Gerald B. Winrod and Gerald LK Smith fused national and Christian symbols to advocate the country's first crude form of Christo-fascism. Smith, who openly admired the Nazis, founded a group called the Christian Nationalist Crusade. The movement proclaimed that Christian character is the basis of all real Americanism. Now, here's what's interesting about Chris Hedges. I don't know if you knew this. He was an ordained minister.
I actually did not know that. I've been reading his stuff for years and never realized that.
Yeah, he's an ordained minister. He has a very serious Christian faith. He is a serious Christian. He's also, I would argue, one of America's more principled journalists and intellectuals. I highly admire his work. He was a wartime reporter in, I believe, Iraq.
Did he write for the Rolling Stone?
He may have. He's written a lot of places. He also had a television program on the Russian news channel RT.
I do realize that, yeah. And he had written articles about being like preemptively censored on certain social media platforms, like YouTube, I believe. His
entire backlog of his show, which is an interview show, which the interesting thing about Chris Hedges, and he is not the type of journalist who would get a show on American television.
It's like Noam Chomsky.
Yeah. But his show was like an interview talk show with writers, intellectuals, philosophers, basically thinkers. And his show was pretty openly critical of not just the Russian government, but all government. But he did have a home on the station RT. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, YouTube decided to just completely delete his entire
back catalog
of all the episodes on RT. So basically his TV show, the years of work deleted, and he luckily found someone who was willing to host all these files for him on a separate
which is, a whole separate podcast, I feel, but it's sort of stunning that they would do that to his back catalog, which by definition couldn't contain anything about the Ukrainian war, really. No. So
and also, appearing on RT does not make you a Russian sympathizer. It just means that you have a TV show on a Russian channel.
Yeah, I am surprised that they would tolerate criticism of the Russian government from someone on RT.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't heard that before.
Russia's an odd place. I don't think it is. Well, I won't get into it. That's for a different episode. But I have talked with a lot of Russians after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Like every group of people, they are multifaceted, right? They don't all agree with Putin's politics. Most of them don't, but most of them are afraid.
I get it.
And I think it's a more extreme version, honestly, of the United States as far as politics and social norms, socially accepted behavior stuff. I mean, different podcast altogether, but
an empire far more advanced in its disintegration.
Yes, exactly. I feel like if Trump won the 2024 election, we would become what Russia is.
A crumbling white ethno-state.
An empire, not in decline, but an empire declined. Okay, so sorry, American Fascist, which, by the way, Hedges' American Fascist is a wonderful book. I always, Chris Hedges, American Fascist is an excellent book. All right, so those three names are very important. William Dudley Perry, Gerald Winrod, and Gerald LK Smith. Gerald LK Smith, first and foremost, Smith was a proud anti-Semite and white supremacist. He was an ordained Disciples of Christ minister, and he founded the Christian Nationalist Crusade in 1942 and the American First Party in 1943, under which he ran for president in 1944. He did not do well. Smith was a member of William Pelley's Silver Legion of America, which was basically an American ripoff of Hitler's brown shirts. William D. Pelley was a Hollywood screenwriter who won 2 O. Henry Awards. He was also the founder of the Silver Legion of America, which Pelley basically promoted on national tours and set up chapters in nearly every state. The Silver Legion was founded in 1933 when Hitler became chancellor, and by 1935, they had an estimated membership of 15,000 American Nazis. Pelley went so far as to propose rounding up Jews into reservations and claimed that he communed directly with Jesus. Oh, guy's a fucking psychopath. Ultimately, Pelley, who was a relentless critic of Roosevelt, he called him Jewsevelt.
I find that to be really surprising because I think there's some infamous cases of anti-Semitism within the Roosevelt administration, especially during World War II when Jews were seeking refuge. And my understanding is they were denied refuge in the United States by the Roosevelt administration.
It wasn't enough. Correct? It wasn't enough.
Not anti-Semitic enough.
Yeah. Anything short of concentration camps.
Too kind is what they're saying.
He called him Jewsevelt. And the American government during World War II was arrested, and Pelley was charged with sedition. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Basically, his rhetoric was so anti-American that he was deemed to be a threat to the government. Gerald Winrod, another notable anti-Semite known as the, quote, Jayhawk Nazi.
What does that mean?
I have absolutely no idea, and I didn't look it up.
That's probably for the best.
Reverend Winrod wrote the 1935 summer smash hit, The Jewish Assault on Christianity, that featured such bangers as this. International Jewish communism, which has already undermined all nations, firmly expects to exterminate all Christians. That's the title of it. Winrod was such an asshole that he was the inspiration for Sinclair Lewis's American dictator character Buzz Windrip in the novel It Can't Happen Here. He was also He was also put on trial for sedition, but those charges were dropped. Gerald's son, Gordon Winrod, is just like his dad, an anti-Jewish propagandist, but an even bigger asshole. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison for kidnapping his 6 children and ordered to pay $26 million after 2 of those grandchildren sued him. Now, Gordon...
That is quite a big sum for, was this 1930s?
I did not. I think this was actually in the 90s.
Oh, this was in the 90s. Okay, still a big sum, but that's like a lordly sum. Did anyone have 26 million in the 1930s?
I have no idea.
The 90s, that makes more sense.
I am realizing now that when I wrote this, I really wish I had dug deeper into this. That might be its own separate episode because that sounds fucking nuts. So Gordon Winrod used to run the publication The Winrod Letter, the self-proclaimed, quote, world's foremost militant Christian publication, which basically ramped up his father's rhetoric, stating in a 1993 tract, quote, the Jews have butchered, burned, and bled Christians down through the centuries. Jewish drinking of warm Christian blood in their Jewish ritual murder of Christians was crowning cause of expulsion of Jews from nation after nation. Jews make all wars. Jews deprave society, deriving financial gain from their crime, movies, pornography, dope, liquor, and tobacco. Jews control the money, media, and thus all politics and all governments. Americans have yet to learn about the Jews. Oh, boy. Corey, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the warm handoff there. This is a broader point, but I'm always just sort of fascinated that, like, I have what I call, like, a crazy sense that goes off when I start thinking about something, and I'm like, that can't possibly be true just because it's just so wild and out there. Like, it's even things that I like, even when I hear a conspiracy theory that say, like, anti-Trump or anti-Republican or that agrees with my own political beliefs, I'm like, there's a skepticism that kicks in at some point. And to sit there and believe in this blood libel and this grand conspiracy, and when I look at the history of the Jewish people, they have had periods of success and prosperity and peace, but I wouldn't flag them as a people that are in enormous control of world affairs, just based on their history and the things that they've been subjected to. But I guess if you don't believe any of that, then you kind of have carte blanche to believe in anything you want about them. But
Here's the thing that I've picked up about Christian attitudes towards the other. I call anybody that's not straight white Christian the other because that's who they're threatened by. They're threatened by everybody who's not them. Whenever they see someone of the other in a position of not even power, but just prosperity, success, there must be some nefarious reason behind it. Like, you cannot be a successful Jewish person without having benefited from some secret society of Jews that run the world. Similarly, you can't be a successful Muslim without somehow being involved in some kind of terrorism funding, like something illegal, right? Like,
yeah, I've seen that same through line where
black people can't be in positions of power or wealth because they didn't earn it, right? It's all diversity higher. Like, it's the same, like,
yeah, it's a through line, and I feel like a part of me wonders if they see that as a challenge to the idea that they should reap rewards through their faith. So if you're successful and you're not a Christian, there's a certain subset of Christians, maybe Christian nationalists per se, that see that as that's flying in contradiction. You must be in touch with some evil because God shouldn't allow you to rise over me. I think there's a lot of hierarchical anxiety. And the same through line I see with, like, their attitudes towards sexuality. Like, I'm following all the rules and you're not, and you're having all this fun. You deserve to be punished either with, a pregnancy you didn't want or a disease that you've caught, like HIV or on the abortion issue, that you must be punished for all the fun you're having because I'm not having this fun. I'm following the rules, and it's not fair that you get to go have fun and I don't.
It really reeks of, like, just gay marriage in general. Like, there is no legal reason that two adults of the same sex cannot get married and join in this legal contract, holy matrimony or secular matrimony.
Yeah, it's a government contract.
Yeah.
There's a government element.
Except that in order to be against it, you would really have to be repressed. And seeing people getting married and you're like, God damn it, I can't live my truth. Like, that's what I think every time I hear a Republican bitching about gay marriage or gay cakes. Like, I wish I could get a gay cake. Like, that's what I think.
I've always just thought it was funny that, like, when they survey people about why they got divorced, like, the gay couple next door or watching two gay people get married has never come up. Like the argument that it violates, that it violates the sanctity of marriage, and this damages heterosexual marriages. Like finances are why couples argue.
Well, this gay couple moved in. We were like, they
get divorced.
They undermined our marriage.
Sorry, kids.
All right, so that's the legacy of the Christian nationalist movement, which has changed throughout the decades, but is deeply rooted in anti-democratic and racist beliefs, as well as a belief in imminent rapture. That imminent rapture part is crucial to this sort of movement because it demands action without thought. It creates urgency on the part of believers to make moves now, without delay, because at any moment God will return to earth to judge us. Imminent rapture doesn't allow you much room to quibble with the beliefs behind the message. You just have to act. Now, perhaps seeing that these extremist leaders could be arrested and charged with sedition and conspiracy for being openly anti-government, the American far right made moves in the 1950s to legitimize their image. Where Smith, Pelley, and Winrod whipped up moderate grassroots support, the John Birch Society was able to get a major foothold thanks to huge cash infusions. Founded in 1958 by wealthy Candy Smith Robert Welch, along with Fred Koch of Koch Industries, Harry Bradley, co-founder of Allen Bradley, a factory automation company, and other major industry leaders, the John Birch Society subscribes to the same brand of paranoia that the earlier Christo-fascist groups popularized, with Robert Welch claiming in the Blue Book of the John Birch Society, quote, both the U.S. and Soviet governments are controlled by the same furtive conspiratorial cabal of internationalists, greedy bankers, and corrupt politicians. If left unexposed, the traitors inside the U.S. government would betray the country's sovereignty to the United Nations for a collectivist New World Order managed by a one-world socialist government. So the John Birch Society was backed by a lot of money and founded by prominent businessmen, and by 1976, just 18 years after being founded, JBS had a membership of some 90,000 and an annual operating budget of $7 million.
Do you know who John Birch was?
No.
He was, I believe, a British spy. He might have been, I think he was either during the Cold War. I think it was during the Cold War. He was captured and I believe tortured by the Chinese government. But he actually was never a member of the John Birch Society. They sort of named it in his honor.
Ah, I gotcha. And while not explicitly a Christian organization, more than a couple JBS members are or have been prominent figures in the religious right, including Phyllis Schlafly, a notorious anti-women's rights advocate. We talked about her a little bit. Tim LaHaye, founder of the conservative Christian advocacy group Council for National Policy, boasting Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson as members. Tim LaHaye himself was on the board of directors of the Christian conservative group The Moral Majority, and his wife founded Concerned Women for America, a conservative Christian women's activist group. Tim LaHaye was also a huge conspiracy theorist and used the Illuminati as inspiration for the secret global organization in his Christian apocalypse fiction series Left Behind. Now, if it's me, Corey, and I'm writing a fiction book, I'm just going to use the Illuminati. I'm not going to make a fictional secret global organization. I'm just going to use the Illuminati.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there. You might as well use it.
And it's not real, so you can make up whatever you want about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, now the John Birch Society and the earlier groups helmed by Winrod, Pelley, and Smith are not directly linked. That's important. John Birch Society and those three anti-Semitic, anti-government people, they're not directly linked. But there is a case to be made for the John Birch Society acting as a sort of respectable cover for those on the far right fringes who seek to gain access to powerful people. Those who, all things being equal, are able to make the appropriate connections for ultra-right-wing or Christian extremist ideas to make it to the mainstream. But this is also where things, they just kind of fall apart. Maybe not fall apart so much as fracture and split off into a million splinters. There aren't any upsides to people like Pelley, Smith, and Winrod, but you can at least say that where they were emboldened by the Nazi Party and Hitler's rise to power, they felt they had this sort of social or political justification for being out in the open, publishing their anti-Semitic propaganda for distribution to members. You knew who was who, what they believed in. They published paranoid treatises that other people agreed with or bought into. What happens with the fall of these organizations and the rise of the John Birch Society is that all those once out in the open members now have a place to hide in this semi-secret society. The members of the Silver Legion of America weren't just like, well, I guess we like Jews now. They had to go somewhere. Those ideas had to go somewhere. And organizations like the Moral Majority, Christian Concerned Women for America, and the John Birch Society, which still retain that focus on global conspiracy, usually tied up in anti-communism as a catch-all for anything not conservative, those organizations just absorb that portion of the population who still seek like-minded people. The far right of today is a messy combination of Christo-fascists, Christian nationalists, free marketeers, libertarian charlatans, and hate groups, and the main players are all over the place. Just making the single episode, I have a list of 30 modern Christian nationalists with varying levels of power and position. That list has grown. I keep a list of Christian nationalists ongoing that I might want to do episodes on. It's up to like 100. Like every time I see a name, I look him up and I'm like, that guy's fucking crazy.
An embarrassment of riches.
Yeah. The Christian right has infiltrated every layer of government, from elected positions to the chaplain of the U.S. House of Representatives, at times more extreme and at times less. Now, you might be thinking it isn't fair to claim that today's conspiracy theorists are just repackaged anti-Semites from yesteryear. Well, it's important to understand some of that conspiratorial language, like cultural Marxism, a phrase cast about all over the place by conservatives, almost like they just like the way it sounds with no idea what it means.
It's sort of joined the ranks of socialism and communism and at times, frankly, fascism, where, especially with the first two, where the more someone uses it, the less they know what it means.
Yeah, cultural Marxism, that's one of those, it doesn't mean anything anymore. So here's where it came from. Cultural Marxism is a conspiratorial attempt to wreck American culture and morality, quote, political correctness on steroids, a covert assault on the American way of life that had been developed over the last 70 years. Since World War II. Quote, in a nutshell, the theory points that a tiny group of Jewish philosophers who fled Germany in the 1930s and set up shop at Columbia University in New York City devised an unorthodox form of Marxism that took aim at American society's culture rather than its economic system. The theory holds that these self-interested Jews, the so-called Frankfurt School of Philosophers, plan to try to convince mainstream Americans that white ethnic pride is bad, that sexual liberation is good, and that supposedly traditional American values, Christianity, family values, and so on, are reactionary and bigoted. With their core values thus subverted, the theory goes, Americans would be quick to sign to the ideas of the far left. End quote, in case you forgot I was quoting. It isn't just a random phrase either. Just last year, 2022, the Heritage Foundation published its article, How Cultural Marxism Threatens the United States and How Americans Can Fight It, which cites among the threats to democracy some of the most influential writers of the 20th century, Jack London, Upton Sinclair, Arthur Miller, J.D. Salinger, Jack Kerouac, and John Steinbeck, being among the center class of literary propagandists. This article or report is almost as unhinged as Resolution 874, but it is a much more literate diatribe that combines many of the conspiracy theories into essentially a call to action for modern conservatives. It's worthy of its own episode, but at its core, the phrase cultural Marxism as used in 2022 is more than anti-Semitic. It is now anti-everything. It is genuinely racist, ableist, homophobic, and now uses the phrase woke to identify the right's new enemies. If you aren't straight, white, and Christian, you're the enemy. The frightening thing about the Heritage Foundation is that it has been around for a long time, since 1973, and it started off with a huge financial backing from Joseph Coors. That is literally the Coors beer guy. And its influence has only grown. It changes to meet the times, and some might argue that it actually changes the times, or that it influences what exactly we're supposed to be outraged about. The Reagan administration actually handed out copies of the foundation's mandate for leadership, which outlined 2,000 proposals for the incoming president and saw many of the mandate's authors wind up in cabinet positions. William Bennett became chairman of the National Endowment for the Humanities and later as Secretary of Education, and James G. Watt became Secretary of the Interior. The Heritage Foundation is a nonprofit conservative think tank, which means they are not technically allowed to lobby the government, but hey, fuck all that and put them on your staff.
Just going back to the phrase cultural Marxism, I can't help but notice that I don't see any like connective tissue between cultural Marxism and what I assume they would call economic Marxism or the actual writings of actual Karl Marx. Like, it looks to me like the scare word is basically all they're using. Like, I don't see anything sort of connecting this with the idea of workers rising up or controlling the means of production. Or
that's what's really interesting about these phrases from the right, is that they don't make any sense.
Like National Socialism,
critical race theory, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Those are actual like descriptions of the beliefs, right? Like critical race theory is...
Yeah, it's an actual theory at the high echelons of elite academic thought. It was never taught to juniors in high school.
It is an academic critique of race theory. Yeah. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is policies meant to broaden or expand diversity, equity, and inclusion into the workplace and schools and everything. Cultural Marxism, it doesn't make fucking sense. Like, it's not Marxist. I don't understand. You read it and you're like, this is not Karl Marx did. This was what?
Yeah, it's like coming up with like rainbow communism. Like, what does that even mean? Like it doesn't. The two words don't suggest each other.
That's gay communists.
Oh, yeah, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it really does. Rainbow communists of every color, every sexuality, every gender, just
communing.
All the queer folk just in a field sharing the fruits of their labor,
singing sea shanties.
The Heritage Foundation, which maybe we should call Rainbow Communism. The Heritage Foundation, also known as the Rainbow Communist Party.
Let's start that now. It's like when Ted Cruz called net neutrality Obamacare for the internet, which I love. It's like he had like a Mad Libs when he was writing his speech, and he just picked out some conservative shibboleths and dropped them in.
This internet is, you know what? I fucking hate Obamacare, and this is. God, it's just like it, but for the internet. All right. The Heritage Foundation, the Rainbow Communist organization, also separates itself from fellow conservative think tanks, the American Enterprise Institute, by being advocates for the Christian right. In other words, they didn't pretend to be strictly political, and they currently hold outsized political influence. The Trump administration hired hundreds of Heritage Foundation recommendations from a database of over 3,000 names, including Scott Pruitt, Betsy DeVos, whose in-laws endowed Heritage Foundation's Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Religion and Civil Society, Mick Mulvaney, Rick Perry, and Jeff Sessions, and at least 66 Heritage employees or alumni joined Trump's cabinet. This has been the plan from the inception of the Heritage Foundation. Paul Weyrich, a deacon in the Melkite Greek Catholic Church, was among the founding members of the Heritage Foundation. Weyrich saw politics as the best weapon for advancing conservative Christian causes. While that doesn't seem like much of a revelation today, the history of evangelical Americans and politics somewhat defies what we might expect. Up until the 1970s, evangelicals basically steered clear of politics as a rule. Faith was a private matter, not something to wield in public. But Weyrich saw the opportunity to form a new, large voting bloc out of evangelicals who had been drifting to the right but not necessarily voting according to Republican beliefs. Catholics and evangelicals were very much on opposite sides of the abortion debate until quite recently. Weyrich wrote, quote, "The new political philosophy must be defined by conservatives in moral terms, packaged in non-religious language, and propagated through the country by our new coalition." He's referring to the Heritage Foundation. He continues, quote, "When political power is achieved, the moral majority will have the opportunity to recreate this great nation." Rogers' Resolution 874 is a crack in the non-religious veneer of the new right of today, though it is a stretch to say that people buy the idea that Republicans are irreligious. I think it's a given that people assume Republican means Christian today, but that was the goal all along. To gain political influence, to join the elected and appointed ranks of government, to impact the social and political landscape, and to recreate the nation in their own image. A country truly ruled by God, not the people. Or to be more specific, to be ruled by the people who speak for God. They did it for their own fucking power. Christian nationalists just want power because they're too dumb to actually be effective politicians without thumping their Bibles. Hot take, I know. When elected officials like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert say they are proud to be Christian nationalists, sure, they may have no idea what those words mean, but they do know that they want to be Christians with power. When Rogers introduced Resolution 874, which died, by the way, it didn't even get voted on, thank God, thank the Rainbow Communists, that was a woman who thought the political landscape was ready to sow with the sort of Christian mandate. And again, this is not unprecedented. In God We Trust was added to the U.S. currency in 1957, not that long ago, the result of House Resolution 619 introduced by Representative Charles Bennett of Florida. And in 1954, the Knights of Columbus made a big push to add under God to the Pledge of Allegiance. Again, not that long ago. Eisenhower was something of a simp for God, apparently, and was happy to sign both into law. The thing is, we now have elected officials who believe there is enough Christian influence in government, thanks to 70-plus years of aggressive networking and organization building, to actually do what Paul Weyrich wanted, to recreate the nation in their image. And that's where we are with this bill, and it is fucking insane. That's the end of my script. Corey, it's fucked. I don't like it. This is gross. It makes me feel icky.
Yeah, well, I think the thing to understand is even though the bill failed, and there are always bills like this, sort of personal hobby horses that are always sort of lapping at the shore, or better yet, bouncing against the walls of our institutions and our rules, our guidelines, and those that would like to remain a society where we have that sort of interpersonal intragroup peace treaty that we call tolerance, that allows a modern society to function pluralistically. And then you always have, there's just always going to be people with that mentality, that authoritarian mentality. They're going to be trying to disassemble. And one thing I thought of is there was a conservative commentator who said that the Republican Party's goal, and he was against this, he was I guess a more moderate conservative, but he said the Republican Party's goal now is the repeal of the 20th century, and to go back in a reactionary way to that imagined pre-20th century time where everybody knew their place, and restore that sort of pre-1960s and pre-1930s, maybe pre-1860s hierarchies that have existed throughout much of American history. And so when you look at this bill, it's easy to dismiss it, but it is a probe. It is a scout into our institutions. And every time one is passed, there's a chance it gets a little bit further than it did before. And of course, we have many sympathetic ears in the Supreme Court now, which is a new development.
The thing that disturbs me about that is that it completely ignores the history of bipartisan legislation that was passed in the 20th century that actually benefited all Americans, and not just Republicans, and not just Democrats, not just conservatives, and not just liberals. Off the top of my head, Nixon and the EPA, pretty big win for America.
Yeah. Some people have called him the last liberal president,
yeah.
And kind of an old school way of thinking about it.
Teddy Roosevelt establishing the national park system. It was a huge loss for our indigenous populations, which is its own episode. But as far as preserving land and environments, that's a pretty big step for such a large power. And there are more that if I sat down and thought about, I could come up with. But when you say repeal of the 20th century, I think you're 100% right, because that is what it feels. It feels like every advance that we made socially, culturally, it hasn't sat well with them for the last 70 years.
No. And what I saw when I look at the past 20 years of political life, you see an alignment between those that want to restore society to 1960 and those who want to restore society to 1929.
Me, I just want to move forward.
So you want progress, kind of like a progressive.
I wouldn't go that far. I get bored, right? I don't like it when things stay the same. Also, I know what we've done in the past. I don't want to do it again. I'm always excited for the next thing. What's the next thing coming up? Who can we give more freedom to? Who can we lift up, right, instead of tear down? I'm always interested in that.
And that goes to the point that I raised earlier, which is that we've tried theocracy.
Yeah.
We've tried the idea of a folk that is a certain religion and everything abides by that religion. And, the experiment I always like to ask people to do is think of another country that you want to live in. I guarantee you, whatever country you're thinking of is not a theocracy.
Oh, no.
And it's almost certainly to the left of the United States and its politics.
The free state of Joe Love is totally not. Did you mean a real state?
Just when I say state, I'm a recovering political science major. So when I say state, I mean another country. Think of another country.
But does it have to be real?
Well,
the free state of Joe Love sounds pretty awesome.
I'm going to change the rules just for you, Joseph, because you're special and wonderful.
We have mountains.
Oh, do you have beaches?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I can move there.
Do you consider a mountain lake shore to
I
be a beach?
love lake beaches.
Then yeah, we have
muddy water up to your ankles.
Yep.
Snapping turtles.
That's it. You got it.
I'm taking all this from a SNL skit, by the way. You should check it on YouTube.
Okay, I will. All right, so there you go. Listen, if you're a conservative and you're listening and you're a Christian, listen, we tried all that stuff. All right, it didn't work. All right, get something new. We're not going theocracy again. It's boring. This has been Unfuck the Poor. This has been my best friend and life partner, Corey. We're members of the...
Touching like Michelangelo and David.
Members of the...
Wait, that's not how that goes.
Members of the Rainbow Communist Party. Founding residents of the newly established free state of Joe Love. If you like... you know what? I tell you what. If you hated this episode, give us 5 stars.
That'll really show us that you
really stick it to us. Give us those 5 stars ironically. Let us know that you really hate us. Just boom, 5 stars. All right. I love you. Let's end this with prayer. Dear Lord, our God in heaven,